The village of Odebala had never seen a woman as breathtaking as Zuri. Her skin glowed like the golden morning sun, her eyes sparkled like stars scattered across a midnight sky, and her hair shimmered like the river that fed the fields. But it was not only her beauty that captivated the villagers, it was her heart. Zuri's kindness was as radiant as her face. She danced at every festival, her laughter filling the air like the scent of blooming flowers. She helped the elders carry heavy loads, played with the children, and shared whatever she had with those in need. Men dreamed of marrying her, women admired her, and children followed her wherever she went, enchanted by her warmth. Life in Odebala was peaceful, and Zuri was its brightest light. Until the whispers began, it started small. Zuri would talk to herself in hushed tones when she thought no one was listening. The words were scattered, broken, as if she were having a conversation with someone no one else could see. The villagers dismissed it at first. Perhaps she was lost in thought. But soon her behavior grew stranger. Her laughter faded. Her once joyful steps became slow, uncertain. She stopped dancing at festivals, stopped playing with the children, stopped helping the elders. Her gaze often wandered into the distance, as if she were staring at something beyond the reach of ordinary eyes. Then came the cockroaches. At first, she only collected them. Villagers would see her crouching in dark corners, lifting rocks, cupping the tiny creatures in her delicate hands. Some found it odd, but they said nothing, until the day she ate one. It happened in the middle of the bustling village marketplace. Zuri sat beneath the great baobab tree, cradling a cockroach in her hands, whispering to it as if it were a dear friend. Then, without hesitation, she placed it in her mouth and swallowed it whole. The market fell into stunned silence. A woman gasped. A child whimpered. Someone dropped a basket of yams. A brave soul finally found their voice. "Why did you do that, Zuri?" She looked up with calm, unreadable eyes and smiled faintly. "They heal me," she whispered. "They speak to me. They tell me how to get better." The villagers recoiled. Zuri, the most beautiful woman in Odebala, had gone mad. From that day forward, everything changed. The young men who once longed for her now kept their distance. The villagers avoided her, crossing the road whenever she walked by. Mothers pulled their children away, yet no one dared to harm her. There was something unsettling about her presence, something that made people uneasy. Despite her strange ways, her beauty did not fade. In fact, some whispered that she had become even more enchanting, as if madness had wrapped her in an eerie glow. Only Mama Afia, the village healer, dared to speak on her behalf. "Leave her be," she told the elders one evening. "The spirits walk through her. She is not lost. She is not sick. She is touched by forces we do not understand." But the villagers were not comforted by her words, and so Zuri remained an outcast. She spent her days wandering, always searching for her cockroaches. She would sit by the river, staring at the water as if listening to voices only she could hear. The children who once ran to her with bright smiles now watched from afar, wide-eyed with fear. Then one evening, as the sun dipped into the horizon, bathing the sky in deep red and gold, Zuri stood at the riverbank. The wind rustled through the trees, carrying whispers from the forest beyond. She lifted her head, her expression unreadable. "They are coming," she murmured. At her feet, the cockroaches scattered, as if they too had heard something. The night of shadows. The first sign of disaster came just before dawn. A deep, unnatural silence settled over Odebala. The usual sounds of the night, chirping crickets, rustling leaves, the distant hoot of an owl, had vanished. It was as if the earth itself was holding its breath. Zuri stood at the riverbank, motionless. Then the ground trembled. From the depths of the forest, shadows shifted. A thick, foul mist crawled toward the village, twisting and curling like living fingers. Zuri felt the air grow colder. The presence she had feared for so long had finally arrived. She turned and ran. Her bare feet barely touched the earth as she sprinted toward the village. The cockroaches swarmed beside her, keeping pace, as if they too were preparing for battle. By the time she reached the village center, the mist had begun to seep through doorways, slipping under thatched roofs. The people stirred in their sleep, restless, uneasy. Zuri knelt on the ground and pressed her palms to the earth. She whispered something ancient, something lost to time. The cockroaches responded instantly. They scattered in all directions, vanishing into the darkness, moving with purpose. Then the screaming began. One by one, the villagers woke to a nightmare. Dark figures, tall, shifting, faceless, emerged from the mist. They moved without sound, their presence heavy, suffocating. Those who tried to run found themselves frozen, trapped by invisible hands. Mama Afia was the first to understand. She stepped outside, eyes widening in horror. And then she saw Zuri, standing tall in the middle of the village, her arms outstretched, her wild hair whipping in the wind. "You knew," Mama Afia whispered. Zuri didn't answer. Instead, she lifted her face to the sky. A low humming sound filled the air, growing, vibrating, deep and endless. The cockroaches had returned. They poured from the shadows, an uncountable mass of tiny bodies moving as one. The villagers shrieked in terror, but Zuri remained calm. She raised her hands higher, and the swarm surged forward. The cockroaches climbed the walls, covered the ground, wrapped around the dark figures like living chains. The faceless intruders recoiled, their bodies convulsing. The mist thickened, fighting back. For a moment it seemed as though the darkness would consume them all. Then a terrible shriek split the air. The shadowy figures twisted and writhed, their bodies dissolving into nothingness as the cockroaches devoured them. The mist shrank back, retreating toward the forest, curling like a wounded serpent. And then, silence. The villagers stood frozen, staring at Zuri in shock. The cockroaches slowly disappeared into the cracks and shadows, as if they had never been there at all. The first rays of sunlight pierced through the mist, casting a golden glow over Odebala. Zuri turned to face them. For the first time in months, she smiled. "They are gone," she said softly. "They will not return." Mama Afia stepped forward, her old eyes filled with understanding. She bowed her head slightly, a gesture of deep respect. One by one, the villagers followed. Zuri, the woman they had feared, the woman they had shunned, had saved them all. And from that day on, no one in Odebala ever whispered about her madness again.